In this lesson, we're going to look at Node's utility module. This was created mostly for Node internally, but we can use it and you might find some of these functions useful. So let's take a quick look at them. To get the utility module, you can do require util. We looked at one of the methods on util.inherits in the previous lesson, but we'll look at a few more in this one. So the first one I want to show you is debug log, which is kind of like a fancier version of console.log. We can create a debug log object, we'll just call ours log, by doing util.debug log. And then we pass it a string, which is some identifier for our debug mode, if you will. And you can just make this whatever keyword you want. I'll go with fulcrum, for example. And so now we can use log just like a regular log function. And so I might say, this is a message. However, the neat thing about debug log is that it won't actually display these messages unless there is a node debug environment variable that is set equal to fulcrum, or whatever keyword you chose. So for example, if I do node util.js, which is what I called it, you can see that absolutely nothing is output. However, if I set node debug equal to fulcrum and then call node util, then you can see that we have this printed out right here. You can see we have fulcrum and then this number here, which is the process ID for Node, and then we have our message. And so this way you can have some debugging added to your module, and you can choose to only have that debug information printed to the screen when you want to enable debugging, when setting this Node debug environmental variable. Now you can have multiple log objects. So for example, if I create a log2 and we'll change this to, we'll just say foobar, and I will create another one for log2. Then if I run with node debug as fulcrum, you can see we get our first message. If I change the node debug variable to foobar, you can see that we have this as a second message. If we want to enable both, we just comma separate them. So I can say foobar fulcrum, and you can see that we have both of our debug objects printing out their messages. Next is the util.format function. To show you this, I'm going to just paste in a little object here. It's nothing too fancy. And util.format takes a string pattern and will interpolate objects into that pattern. There are three pattern placeholders that you can use. For example, %s will print out a string, %d will print out a number, and %j will print out JSON, or an object representation. To show you the difference here, let's use string and JSON. And the way this works is I pass in as extra parameters to util.format whatever objects I want to interpolate into these positions. So the first one here, %s, will be replaced with the first parameter after the string itself. Second one, of course, will be replaced by the second parameter. So here we're passing person, this object I created here, as the object to be interpolated in both cases. And in one case, it will be converted to the string, and the next, it will be converted to JSON. Now this just outputs a string. It doesn't actually print it to the screen. So I'll have to do a console.log line around this so that we actually can see that. And we'll call node util. And you can see the difference here. When we print an object as a string, we get object. When we print it as JSON, we get actual JSON representation that we can see. So this may be a handy object formatting function if that's what you need. Now, similar to this is util.inspect, which allows you to print out an object in more detail. So, for example, if I console.log util.inspect on util itself, then you can see what I get is this output that shows us the entire util object. I can pass util.inspect some options. So for example, if I want to set colors equal to true, it will color the output. So now you can see we have some colors showing up here. And this is the entire util module, and it's a nice way to view larger objects. While we're looking at the util object here, I want to point out a set of methods that you'll probably find useful, and these are the isSumObject functions. You can see we have isArray, isBoolean, isNull or undefined, and it keeps going all the way down, isFunction, isPrimitive, isBuffer. These are an easy way to figure out the type of a bunch of different native JavaScript objects. And I could show you this in action if we just start up a Node console here, and then let's say util equals require util, and then I can say util.isArray, and I can pass in an object. That's false, but if I pass it an actual array, that's true. Util.isNull, I can pass it null, and that's true. I can pass it undefined, and that's false. Is null or undefined, then that's true. And you can see we have a whole list of these, and you can see this in the util documentation that I'll put a link to under this lesson. They're very simple functions. They do exactly what they say, and you'll probably find them useful in creating your own modules. The last util function that I want to look at is util.inherits, which we looked at very briefly in our previous lesson, but I want to make sure you really understand what's going on. And so let's create an example from scratch. Let's create a constructor function for a user. So we have some user class, and let's give this user a logged in function. So for now, we'll just return true, very simple, but user instances can check to see if they're logged in. Now we have a special kind of user, and that is the admin. Now we want an admin to be able to do everything that a user can do, as well as some of its own things. So we will set admin.prototype to have a few of its own methods. But first, what we want to do is util.inherits, and we want admin to inherit everything on the user function's prototype. So what this will do basically is set the user.prototype object to be the prototype of the admin.prototype object. So the way to think about this is we can say admin.prototype.prototype is going to equal user.prototype. So this way, admin instances can access anything on the user prototype, but if they need to overwrite it with their own method, that can be done through admin.prototype, and it's not going to overwrite the method on the user.prototype object. It will just shadow it on the admin.prototype object. And so we can see this in action if we create a new admin here, and then we can just console.log admin.loggedin. And now let's run this file one more time, and you can see we have true printed out, which means our admin instances have access to the prototype methods of the user class. So that is Node's utility module. Like I said, it was originally created for use internally in Node, but a lot of those methods are useful when you're creating your own modules.